Please stand.
Roughly a year ago, the Supreme Court of Victoria allowed a television camera to broadcast a sentencing for the first time. The hearing for convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson.
For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment.
When Justice Christopher Beale sentenced her to life in prison, it was the conclusion of a story that had captivated Australia for more than 2 years.
Oh, it was a big moment. It was a really big conclusion to this. It's been building up. It's amazing to think it's stretched over 2 years now.
Investigative journalist Lucie Morris-Marr followed the case since the fatal mushroom lunch in July 2023, where Erin Patterson served beef Wellington laced with poisonous death cap mushrooms to her in-laws.
I think the whole of Australia, if they were watching that live, of course, it's also a historical moment today because the Supreme Court of Victoria has never broadcast a sentencing live or anything live like that. But as much as the media have gone through this and covered it, it's nothing like the families, the relief they must feel today, having gone through all that themselves. And I know for them, this has been absolutely exhausting.
Now, Patterson has been back in court appealing her convictions, while prosecutors argue her sentence, which allows her to apply for parole after 33 years, is too lenient and that she should never be released from prison. I'm Daniel James, and you're listening to 7am. Today, we revisit our conversation with investigative journalist and author Lucie Morris-Marr on the sentencing of Erin Patterson, the suffering her crimes caused, and how the judge decided her punishment. It's Sunday, August 23. This episode was first published in September 2025.
Lucie, Erin Patterson has just been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum prison period of 33 years. There were many aggravating factors that the judge spoke about when he handed down that decision. One was her lack of remorse. He mentioned that several times. So tell me what you were thinking as you heard him lay that out.
Of course, with the judge, naturally, he doesn't ever say his opinion, really. He did seem very taken by the victim impact statements a couple of weeks ago, where 7 members of the hugely extended families stood up and read their victim impact statements. And he did say, this is a tsunami of pain and grief. And that got the sense, of how he was feeling. But of course, then to hear him lay out in detail Erin's planning, her lies, and the way he did it with such clarity, it just really reiterated that the jury made the right decision.
The prosecution submits and your counsel concedes that your offending falls into the worst category of offending for these offences and that you should receive the maximum penalties for your crimes. I agree, for reasons that I will come to in due course.
And he was very scathing at times, naturally.
Not only did you cut short 3 lives and cause lasting damage to Ian Wilkinson's health, thereby devastating the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families, you inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents.
He said this crime was premeditated and planned. He made that absolutely clear. He clearly outlined each aspect. For example, looking up death caps on iNaturalist's website.
That is a website on which people can post and view sightings of death cap mushrooms, amongst other things. On the 28th of May 22, you accessed the iNaturalist website and navigated to its worldwide map in relation to sightings of death cap mushrooms.
She bought a dehydrator. She took pictures of what experts later said looked like death caps in that dehydrator and sent them on her friend group with the true crime friends that she'd made on Facebook.
You photographed forage mushrooms on the trays of your dehydrator. The images were found by investigators on a Samsung tablet later seized from your home.
She invited Simon Patterson to the infamous lunch, saying she had an important medical news, which of course we now know is lies.
Simon and you exchanged messages. Simon's read, quote, "Sorry, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with you, Mum, Dad, Heather and Ian tomorrow. But I am happy to talk about your health and implications of that at another time if you'd like to discuss on the phone. Just let me know." You replied 5 minutes later, quote, That's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow.
And the judge said he accepted Ian Wilkinson's evidence that she served guests on grey, larger plates and hers was on a small plate, which was a huge part of the trial. It just went on, and it really reminded those watching live exactly how elaborate this crime was and intentional.
Yeah, and he also said that it was clear that she had wanted her guests to suffer. She would have known the effect of poisoning with death cap mushrooms, and he described what she'd done as falling into the worst category of murder and attempted murder. So what did you make of his characterisation of how serious her crimes are?
Absolutely correct. I mean, during the trial, I was very moved. It was very difficult to listen to the suffering involved in terms of those poor people, the initial gastro symptoms, which became more and more extreme as the hours went by, and then their time in hospital as medics desperately tried to save them. Their organs were basically filling with fluid, and it was actually a reminder that violent crimes don't always have to involve a knife or a gun. This was a very nasty, violent crime. And as he said, she intended to kill them all, and she showed no pity for her victims. Another quote he said was, "You followed through on your lethal plan," which was actually a quote, as he noted, from Heather and Ian's daughter, Ruth Dubois.
As the Wilkinsons' daughter, Ruth Dubois, remarked in her victim impact statement, you, quote, followed through on your lethal plan. Your lunch guests each suffered severe gastrointestinal illness on the Sunday and Monday prior to being sedated and mechanically ventilated. Their suffering was protracted.
Because maybe if she'd said, yes, I foraged, and they would have realised there was a chance that they could have consumed death caps or another seriously poisonous mushroom, they could have had an antidote or the medication that people can have to protect from liver damage. So she carried on the crime in those following days. And he said their suffering was substantial. It was enormous betrayal of the trust of your victims. All had been good to you.
Your victims were all your relatives by marriage. More than that, they had all been good to you and your children over many years, as you acknowledged in your testimony.
Very damning, very scathing, and rightly so.
And one thing that Justice Beale pointed out was that we still don't know why Erin Patterson did what she did. Motive was never established. He said, and he was talking directly to her, only you know why you did this. So given that, do you think that we're just going to see endless speculation here about what her motive was?
Yes, and unless she ever confesses, which it doesn't look likely, we will never know. I mean, of course, there's speculation. There was a fallout. He did mention the family fallout briefly when she was seeking support from Don and Gail Patterson regarding her estranged husband Simon's lack of paying child support for a short time. And there's speculation that she held on to that grudge, even though it seemed to be resolved, and that she really held that in. But of course, we heard when the pre-trial suppression order was lifted, we heard that, Simon Patterson alleges that she tried to poison him on several occasions and made him extremely unwell. But, clearly she's in the right place. It's a very serious crime. This is a serial killing crime, and one that we thankfully don't see very often in Australia. But she has been given these life sentences. And yes, it's 33 years in prison, non-parole period. But actually, if you break it down, Ian Wilkinson's attempted murder was 25 years. The killing of Heather Wilkinson, life in prison. Gail Patterson, life in prison. Don Patterson, life in prison. I mean, if you added all that up, it would come to like 100 years, but she can only do what she can do. So it's being done concurrently, and it's a life sentence with a non-parole period of 33 years. But she'll be 83. Will she live to see that? We don't know. It's not exactly conducive, healthy conditions where she's being held.
Coming up, why the sole survivor of Erin Patterson's poisoned lunch has offered forgiveness. Lucie, in setting Erin Patterson's non-parole period, Justice Beale spoke a lot about this being one of the biggest points that he had to make a decision on. So tell me about the considerations that would have gone into his decision.
I think with the non-parole period, when there was the pre-sentencing hearing in the last few weeks that we've had, there was a lot of argument between the Crown and the defence barrister, Colin Mandy, SC, in terms of should there be a non-parole period. The Crown were pushing, no, she should die in jail. And in the end, the judge said the reason he gave her a non-parole period, so for example, you could call that a shred of light that one day at 83 years old, she could have some kind of freedom if she makes it that long. He said he took into consideration Erin's life in the Gordon wing of Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. Now, this wing's quite infamous. It is the most serious isolation wing, where generally they're in their cells for maybe 22 hours, 23 hours a day, and they don't really mix with each other. They only mix with staff. So even though she's in theory allowed out of her cell, sometimes she doesn't get out. But they're saying due to the forthcoming documentaries, books, etc., her notoriety will go on, and they're worried that she would be attacked effectively in prison. So he took that into consideration in terms of giving her that non-parole period, because he accepts that that's not really standard to keep someone in segregation. In fact, the UN suggests it should only be 15 days at a time, and she's facing many years at a time in this situation.
Yeah, given that it is in breach of UN guidelines, how long is a situation like that likely to go on for? Like, you would hope, well, you would think that it might change.
Yeah, I suppose while we're in this frenzy, we've got the Stand documentary coming out. There's books coming out from multiple publishers. There's going to be so much attention on this. And so I think therefore her own safety, I think it will be for the foreseeable future. It might be, a few years, 5 years, she might be able to go back and be in a more general area and have, despite what she's done, we're a humane country and we treat people appropriately. And I think that's important for us as a society. And so she will be treated as appropriate for her status at that point.
My purpose here today is to give some well-earned thanks. Firstly, to Victoria Police, in particular, the Homicide Squad and the team led by Detective Stephen Eppingstall.
And Ian Wilkinson, who was the only person to survive that lunch, he was there today and he spoke briefly outside of court. He thanked police, he thanked prosecutors. So tell me a bit about the impact of all of this on him, as well as the other community members, family members, friends.
Ian Wilkinson, I remember seeing him at the pre-trial hearing for the first time. It was the first time he appeared in court. That was last year in the Supreme Court on William Street in Melbourne. I was absolutely blown away by his presentation. He was just so poised for what had happened, including loss of his wife. He appeared at the trial. He was very strong. He got the facts out. He didn't waver. He wasn't overcome by emotion. Again, extremely impressive character. It was only when he came to do his victim impact statement 2 weeks ago that he did break down, as he talked about Heather's character. And she sounded such a wonderful person, absolutely lovely mother and grandmother who helped her local community, helped family. And he talked of the loneliness, the isolation, the despair of being a new widower. He called himself suddenly single, like at that age, his early 70s. And he broke down, but he still carried on. He got through that statement. He took deep breaths, he paused. And then, of course, his daughter, Ruth Dubois, another incredibly impressive lady, who said how much she missed her mother. And poignantly, she said, "She was somebody I trusted with both the best parts and worst parts of myself, knowing there'd be no judgment." I was really connected to what she said, and I really realised the loss, and that really was emotional. And then, of course, there was many other statements made. In fact, altogether lodged with the court, there was 28 victim statements. The judge was clearly very moved by that. And he said this has affected generations, plus their friends, plus the community. He took that into consideration with the sentencing.
And so Erin Patterson now has a month to lodge an appeal, either against her sentence or her conviction, or both. So does that seem likely to happen?
Well, it's up in the air at the moment. She now has exactly 28 days from today, as you mentioned, to appeal either against conviction or sentence. So it will be very interesting. Her barrister, Colin Mandy, didn't comment. He was surrounded by media as he left the court today. It was interesting. There was one point in the judge's speech where I thought, he may seem to suggest she shouldn't appeal. He pointed out that Ian Wilkinson had offered her his forgiveness. And the quote that Ian Wilkinson said, it was for all those harms done to me with full confession and forgiveness. And it was interesting the judge mentioned that. It was perhaps he was saying, don't appeal, don't put these people through that, and make yourself a better person, which is what Ian Wilkinson did. But look, at this point, she's got 33 years ahead of her before she's out. That's if she survives that long in those conditions. And so I think she probably will appeal. Like she's never confessed. She's put everyone through a lengthy trial. So we'll have to just see. But I wouldn't be surprised because she literally has nothing to lose.
Well, Lucie, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Seven AM will be back tomorrow with an episode on the booming market for political information. US President Donald Trump is selling fast access to his Truth Social posts to trading firms, while prediction markets are letting people bet on everything from elections to White House decisions to wars.
More than 150 wallets on Polymarket may have traded on inside US military information. So that soldier who was charged back in April for using classified information to bet on the removal of former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And back in March, just before Trump announced the strikes on Iran, there were a series of well-timed bets that were placed on some of these big exchanges. They were placed precisely a few minutes before the policy announcement from Trump, which means that obviously some insiders profited from early access to information from Trump's inner circle.
That'll be in your feed tomorrow. I'm Daniel James. Thanks for listening to 7am.